Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Measure Authoring Tool version 5.6 training session. My name is Kayla Pettigrew and I'm the MAT trainer. In the room with me today are Dawn Gray, our business analyst, Tom Dunn, our product owner, and Stan Rankins, our information architect. The agenda for today is as follows. We will start with an overview of what has changed between the MAT version 5.5 and version 5.6. We will then talk more in depth about back-end changes, and we will move into a live demonstration of the user interface changes. We will then review the timeline and details for the release of the MAT version 5.6. Before we close out our portion of the training, we'll open the floor for questions, and then we'll turn the presentation over to the Bonnie team. During the last few months, the MAT development team has made several changes both to the behind-the-scenes operations as well as to the user interface of the MAT version 5.6. Here are some of the enhancements we have made to the tool that may not be as obvious to our users. We have incorporated a new version of the CQL to ELM translator. Upon versioning either measures or CQL libraries, the MAT will now remove the included statements for unused child libraries from the final versions. We have made updates to align the MAT with CQL R1 STU3. We have made updates to the measure exports and updated the MAT to allow for the utilization of the QDM version 5.4. Additionally, we made updates for changes to the VSAC API. And here is a brief overview of the user interface changes that we will discuss further in the live demonstration. Some of the user interface changes that we will show you include a change of location for the UMLS login and changes to the selections available when exporting a measure. In the measure details section of the tool, changes have been made to the NQF number declaration. A new comment box was added in the CQL workspace and the CQL composer. The edit icon for included libraries has been renamed. Value set versions were removed, and there have been updates to the program and release fields for the value sets. A select all feature was added for copying value sets and codes. Changes were made to the default direct reference codes, and you can now use additional special characters in the codes. The MAT will now package your measure upon versioning. Composite measure support has been added to the MAT, and an interface was added that will allow you to upload measures directly to the Bonnie tool. Now let's take a closer look at the behind-the-scenes changes. The MAT version 5.6 now uses the 1.3.10 release of the CQL to ELM translator, which is used to validate your CQL logic within the system. This means that CQL logic that passed the translator in the previous version of the MAT may now contain errors that will need correction. Those errors can be seen in the View CQL section, in the CQL workspace, and the CQL composer tabs. The MAT will now notify the user if there are unused included libraries in the measure when versioning. If unused CQL libraries are included, you will receive a message telling you that the MAT will remove these upon versioning. You then have the option to continue to have the MAT remove them for you, or you can choose to cancel the action and go back and make changes to your CQL library that may include the addition of any unused included libraries before versioning. The MAT version 5.6 has implemented the new CQL R1 STU3 standards, which includes two new predefined functions, geometric mean and product. These functions are in the CQL workspace when you insert a function. Additionally, there are two new CQL data types in the function argument creator. These are the date and ratio data types. These are available when you add an argument. This implementation also includes two new keywords, expand and per, that are now available in the CQL editor. You can get to these by navigating to the CQL editor and using Ctrl-Alt-K to view the options available. There have been a few updates to the measure exports that we would like to share with you. First, the human readable file was updated to include a stratification declaration in the population criteria section for cohort measures. The human readable and the population criteria section are now consistent with each other. The HQMF templates have been updated to align with the new CQL HQMF implementation guide, and templates were added to the HQMF to support the new composite measures. The MAT is now using the QDM version 5.4, which includes changes to the data types and attributes available within the MAT. One of the changes is the addition of 4 new data types and their corresponding attributes. The new data types are assessment order, assessment not ordered, communication performed, and communication not performed. All the communication data types previously available in QDM version 5.3 have been removed and replaced with the 2 new communication data types I mentioned on the previous slide. The removed data types are communication from patient to provider, communication from patient to provider not done, communication from provider to patient, communication from provider to patient not done, communication from provider to provider, and communication from provider to provider not done. Because these data types were deleted, any measure drafts that include them will need to be updated. There are some attribute additions and deletions as well. 4 new attributes are now available for use in the new data types: communication performed and communication not performed. These new attributes are category, medium, sender, and recipient. These 3 attributes are new as well. Days supplied is available in medication discharge, medication dispensed, and medication order. Dispenser ID is available in medication dispensed, and prescriber ID is available in medication dispensed and medication order. Some attributes were removed from the QDM version 5.4. The attribute supply was removed from immunization administered, medication active, medication administered, substance administered, and substance recommended. Anatomical approach site is no longer available for use. And the method attribute was removed from the data types of assessment recommended, diagnostic study order, laboratory test order, physical exam order, procedure order, diagnostic study recommended, laboratory test recommended, physical exam recommended, procedure recommended, substance recommended, medication order, and substance order. If you have used any discontinued data types or attributes in your measure drafts, your CQL logic will now contain errors that will need correction. Those errors can be seen in the View CQL workspace. And the last back-end update I'll mention is regarding the VSAC. In preparation for the upcoming changes to the VSAC API, the MAT has changed the calls presented to the VSAC via the API connection. This change will not affect the function of loading value sets and codes into your measures. Now we'll get into the tool and look at some of the user interface changes in the MAT. One change you'll notice right away upon logging into the MAT is the removal of the UMLS login page. Now a link is provided in the upper right corner of each screen that will allow you to log in to the UMLS. One of the benefits of this feature is that you can stay on the page you're working on and still log into your UMLS account. Green and red indicators show your status. As you can see, the link to log in to the Bonnie tool will be available in this location as well. We'll talk more about the Bonnie tool later in the training. When exporting a measure from the Measure Library screen, you will now notice some new options available. In the previous version, you had an option titled ECQM. Opening this option gave you the human readable document, and saving it gave you the HQMF file. Based on feedback from users, this was confusing, especially to those new to the MAT. To clear up the confusion, the ECQM option was taken out and has been replaced with 2 separate radio buttons titled Human Readable and HQMF. The ECQM package is still available to export the entire package in one zip file. Another item I would like to point out on this screen is that you can click on the measure name, which is a link that will take you directly back to the measure details page of your measure. You will no longer need to go to the measure library to get back into the measure you are exporting. This may be helpful if you realize you need to go back and make changes to the measure. From here, we will move to the Measure Details tab. Here there was a change made to the NQF number declaration. In the new version of the MAT, if the field endorsed by NQF is set to no, the NQF number field will auto-populate with the words not applicable and the field will be disabled. If the endorsed by NQF field is set to yes, the MAT will now require that you enter an NQF number. If you do not put an NQF number in the field after selecting yes in the drop-down, an error message will appear at the top of the page requiring you to add the NQF number. The yes/no field can be altered later if you would like to make changes. Moving to the CQL Workspace tab, I'll show you a user-requested change that was made. You'll notice a new comment box was added to the General Information page. The purpose of this comment box is to enter information that applies to the CQL library overall. Information entered here will show on the View CQL page before the model declaration. After packaging the measure, the information entered in this box will also show above the model declaration in the CQL file export. Because the output of these comment boxes displays this way with the asterisk and the slash, these two characters cannot be used together when entering information in any of the comment boxes in the mat. From here, we will go to the Included Libraries section. On this page, you will see that the Edit icon has been changed to a Replace icon. This was done to more accurately represent the action being made, which is not actually to edit the included library, but instead to replace it with a different version of the library within your measure. When you click on the Replace icon, you will get a dialog box with all available included library versions that use the QDM version 5.4. Here you can select the desired version and click Apply. This feature will be particularly useful as some included libraries will need to be updated to new versions now that the mat is using the QDM version 5.4. To accommodate changes made to the VSAC API, the version field has been removed from the Value Set section of the CQL Workspace. Additionally, the version column in the Applied Value Sets table has been replaced by a Program column. Another change you will notice on the value set space is that it will now be possible to retrieve a value set by entering the OID and the program without entering the release. You may certainly select a release along with a program. However, if you do not choose a release, the mat will return the most recent profile for that program for that value set. The program field is still optional, and measure developers can still retrieve an OID by just entering the OID and clicking the Retrieve button. Another user-requested feature that was implemented is the option to select all in both the value sets and codes section. To use this feature, you will click the Select All icon above the Applied Value Sets or Applied Codes lists. This will select all the applied value sets or codes within the list. You can then copy and paste them into another measure or library. You would then click on the Copy icon, navigate to another measure, and click Paste in the Applied Value Sets table or Applied Codes list. The mat can now accommodate the use of direct reference codes that use special characters within its code description. It was discovered by a user that certain characters like single quote, double quotes, or a backslash were causing issues in the CQL logic. These characters were removed from the CQL identifiers. There has been a change to the direct reference codes. The mat is no longer treating the direct reference birth date and dead codes as default codes. These codes will only be included if the measure developer chooses to add them to the measure. For any existing measures, if the birth date and dead codes have not been used within valid CQL logic, they will automatically be removed from the measure upon drafting or cloning. Validation is still provided to ensure that the correct codes are being used with the patient characteristic birth date and patient characteristic expired data types. We'll go back now to the measure library to look at the versioning process changes. The mat will now attempt to create a fresh package of your measure upon versioning. This feature was added to minimize the instances of the accidental creation of a version that was never packaged. If the packaging fails, the measure developer will be given the option to version the measure without a package or to cancel the versioning and go back to correct errors. Another change in the versioning process is that the mat will now remove any included libraries that were not used within expressions in your measure or in your standalone CQL library when you create a new version. Upon versioning, if there are unused included libraries, you will receive a message stating that if you pressed continue, these libraries will automatically be removed from the measure or CQL library. If you do not want them removed, you may click cancel and cancel your version process. You may then choose to go back and use that library in your CQL logic. Now we'll move on to composite measures. The mat is now able to support creation, packaging, exporting, editing, versioning, and drafting of composite measures except for weighted composite measures. Composite measures make use of two or more component measures to produce a combined score, which can be useful for a variety of purposes. Composite performance measures can group measures to provide a broader assessment of quality care. Let's walk through creating a new composite measure and show the composite measure exports. You will now see a new icon in the upper right corner in the Measure Library tab titled New Composite Measure. For your measure to be constructed as a true composite measure, it needs to be created through this new composite measure icon. The structure of composite measures in the MAT version 5.6 follows updated standards. These standards are not backwards compatible with the previous expression of composite measures. Therefore, users who are creating composite measures will need to follow the Create New Composite Measure workflow in the MAT. To create your measure, click on this icon to be taken to a screen that looks very similar to the one you are already accustomed to using. Like for a regular measure, you will give your new composite measure a name and an abbreviated title. You will then see a new field titled Composite Scoring Method. Here you are going to choose the type of composite measure you are creating. The MAT can currently support all or nothing, opportunity, and patient-level linear methods. What you choose in the Composite Scoring Method field will dictate what is available in the Measure Scoring field. For example, if you choose all or nothing as your composite scoring method, you will have proportion and ratio available in the Measure Scoring field. As usual, the patient-based indicator options are driven by what is chosen in the Measure Scoring field. Once all your options have been chosen, click on the Continue button, and you will be taken to a new screen which allows you to choose the component measures for your composite. To select your component measures, you first need to perform a search for them. You can search either by measure name or by measure owner. Measures will only appear in the list if they use the same version of the QDM as the composite measure. Since we're just starting to use the QDM version 5.4, only measures that have been updated in the QDM version 5.4 will show in your search. You may select measures you want to include in your composite measure by clicking the checkbox in line with the measure name. When you do this, the measure will automatically be added to the Applied Components Measures list at the bottom of the screen. Similarly, if you choose to uncheck one of the measures will be taken off this list. There are some guidelines to follow when you select the components to include in your composite measure. For example, if you are writing a proportion composite measure, then you must choose either proportion or ratio component measures. A full list of the guidelines for selection of component measures is available in the CQL HQMF implementation guide. At least 2 component measures must be included in your composite measure. Each component measure in the Applied Components Measures list must be given an alias. Just like included libraries, these aliases will be used in your CQL logic to refer to the component measures. Once everything has been selected and entered, click on the Save and Continue button to create your composite measure. Inclusion of component measures and their associated logic is based on the requirements within the CQL-based HQMF implementation guide. The MAT will provide validations for the user to ensure those requirements have been met. After successfully saving, you will then be directed to the Measure Details page of your new composite measure. There are a few changes to note on this page. The first is that the component measure list has been moved to the Click to View General Information section. Additionally, the Add Components button has been removed from this page as all component measures must be added or deleted from the screen we just left. Another change to note on this page is that the composite option has been removed from the list of available measure types, as the MAT will now automatically assign the composite designation to those created using the new composite measure icon. Next, we will navigate to the CQL workspace and look at the new components section. This section functions very similarly to the included libraries section, where you can double-click on the alias in the left-hand navigation box and view the CQL file contained within that component measure in the View CQL File Here field. Additionally, it will show the associated measure name, owner, and CQL library name. Please note that you cannot make edits on this screen. If you want to make changes to the component measures, you need to use the Edit icon on the Measure Library tab. The remaining sections in the CQL workspace function the same way as a regular measure. Before moving on to the exports, I want to mention that although you can delete measures that you own in the MAT, measures that are used as components in a composite measure cannot be deleted. You will receive a message telling you in which composite measure it was used. Now we're going to move to a completed composite measure so we can look at the package and export the measure. You will notice that the measure package or tab looks slightly different. There is no longer an add grouping button or a measure grouping list at the top of the screen because a composite measure can only have one grouping. Just like in a regular measure, you will move the populations you would like to include in your composite to the right side and save your grouping. The supplemental data element and risk adjustment variables sections still work the same way, but there are additional validations that occur. For example, if you have a supplemental data element within a component measure, that same supplemental data element must be present within the composite measure, and the same is true for risk adjustment variables. And just like a regular measure, you have the option to either create your measure package or create your package and export. We will first click on the Create Package and Export button so we can take a look at the zip file for the exports. Due to the number of exports that need to be created for a composite measure package, this action may take a moment. The loading bar at the top of the page shows when the packaging is complete. When complete, you can open or save the zip file. When opening a composite measure zip file, the main folder will contain all the exports for the composite measure, which includes the HQMF, human readable file, CQL file, JSON file, and ELM file, as well as the accompanying files for any included libraries. Additionally, you will now see subfolders that contain the complete measure package for each component measure included in your composite measure. There's one more item I want to show regarding composite measures, and that is the export screen, which is accessed from the Measure Library tab. Clicking on the export icon in line with the composite measure name will take you to the export screen for your measure. Just like with a regular measure, the measure name is now a link that will take you to the Measure Details tab of the measure you are currently exporting. The biggest change for composite measures is that the only option given is to export the entire package. The reason for this is that all files are needed in order to properly execute the composite measure. And now we'll move to the new Bonnie upload feature available in the MAT. As I pointed out earlier in the demonstration, you can log into the Bonnie tool through the link in the upper right corner of the window. Upon clicking on the link, you will receive a message stating that you are entering another website and that you will automatically be redirected back to the MAT. Click Yes at this point. We need to make a few notes here regarding the login to Bonnie and the API connection. If you are using the MAT in Internet Explorer, you will see a big red warning message when you get to the Bonnie login page stating you are using an unsupported browser. While it's true that the Bonnie tool does not support Internet Explorer, the login function still works. Once you are logged in and redirected back to the MAT, all interactions are done via the API and not the browser, so there is no issue when using this API through the MAT while using the MAT in Internet Explorer. However, if your expectation is to use the MAT and the Bonnie tools open at the same time in different windows of the same browser, it is recommended that you use Firefox, as that is supported by both tools. Please note, the MAT does not support Chrome as a browser. The MAT is supported in Internet Explorer 11 or above, or Mozilla Firefox 36 or above. After a successful login to the Bonnie tool, you will be redirected back to the MAT and will notice that the indicator in the upper right corner has turned green. Another note here, the login to Bonnie through the MAT tool will persist through sessions for up to 5 days. This means that you may not need to log into Bonnie every time you log into the MAT. It also means that if you want to completely end your login to the Bonnie, you will need to open the Bonnie tool in a browser window and log out there. The capability to upload to the Bonnie tool is available in the export screen. If you are planning to upload to the Bonnie tool, you will need to be logged in to the UMLS and the Bonnie tool. If you are not logged in, you will be prompted to do so. You will click on the tab Upload to Bonnie and click the blue Upload button. If you have test cases uploaded in the Bonnie tool, you should receive an Excel spreadsheet with the results of those test cases returned. If you do not have test cases uploaded, you will receive a blank Excel spreadsheet. The Bonnie tool will support the upload of composite measures starting sometime in November. Only measures in the most recent QDM version can be uploaded to Bonnie through the MAT. So now that we're using the QDM 5.4, only measures written or updated to this version can be uploaded. You will not see the Upload to Bonnie tab on any measures that have not yet been updated to the latest version of the QDM. While on this screen, if you feel the need to make changes to your measures, you can click on the measure name link to be taken to the measure details page of that measure. To disconnect from the Bonnie tool while using the mat, you will click on the measure export icon for any measure. You will then click the Upload to Bonnie tab and click Disconnect from Bonnie. If you would like to change users, you would follow the same process to disconnect. Then you will click on the Sign into Bonnie link in the upper right corner of the screen. Click Yes to the notification that you are leaving the mat. On the Bonnie page, you will click on the blue Change User button, and this will give you the same login screen that we previously discussed. That concludes the live demonstration. I would like to mention that there are some known issues regarding the logic examples provided in the CQL HQMF implementation guide for composite measures. For additional information and updated examples, you may check the CQL Formatting and Usage Known Issues wiki page located in GitHub. Now we'll talk briefly about the schedule for the release. The MAT version 5.6 will be released to production the evening of Tuesday, October 16th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time and will be ready for use by 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, October 17th. Release notes will be posted to the MAT public website after the release is complete, and the updated user guide and training video will be available by October 30th. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the MAT version 5.6, you may contact the MAT support desk one of three ways. You may use the gold Contact Us button on the MAT public website. You may call 1-800-673-0655, or you may send an email to support@emeasuretool.org.
All right, hello everyone. I'm James Bradley from the MITRE Corporation. I'm the technical lead of Bonnie, and we're going to be discussing Bonnie 3.0 and the features that we're adding. So here's just the quick agenda for the presentation. We'll go over what Bonnie is in case people aren't familiar. We'll briefly discuss the updates in Bonnie 3.0. Then we'll discuss the future of Bonnie and the servers that Bonnie is running. Then we'll wrap it up with listing off some Bonnie resources and then have time for questions. All right, so Bonnie. Bonnie is an electronic clinical quality measure testing tool that allows users to load ECQMs that are exported from the measure authoring tool. Once the ECQMs are loaded into their account, users can build out synthetic patients using data elements defined as part of the measure definition. As a user is building out these patients, they're testing the new and updated ECQM logic, and as they are building out these data elements, they're also able to explore the behavior and complexity characteristics of ECQMs. So for the Bonnie 3.0 updates, we have two big updates for 3.0. The first one is the Bonnie API for the MAT Bonnie integration. And just to reiterate, what that means is that we accept packaged measures directly from the MAT. Once the measures are uploaded into Bonnie through the API, we then calculate the existing test cases on the measure, and we will return an Excel export of the results for those patients or test cases. In addition to that, we will also have the annual update standard support. So we now will support CQL 1.3 and QDM 5.4. So when you log into Bonnie after our update, some of these test cases will be seen as either pending or failing, depending on if you're using certain CQL operators or QDM data types that are no longer supported or supported in different ways. So two of those right off the bat is the QDM communication data types. They're all brought down to one, communication performed data type now. And then the CQL collapse operator will not calculate appropriately until it's repackaged from the measure authoring tool. Alright, so now the future of Bonnie, and specifically QDM logic Bonnie. So the current situation up until tomorrow, we are running Bonnie 2.3 on bonniehealthit.gov and Bonnie QDM logic-based Bonnie on Bonnie-prior. Starting tomorrow, we will be moving Bonnie 3.0 to production, Bonnie 2.3 to Bonnie prior, and for a transition period, we will be supporting Bonnie QDM on a new server called bonnie-qdm.healthit.gov. And this is due to a need from some of the users in our community who still need QDM logic support for measures and test cases. So between tomorrow and June 1st of 2019, we will be running those 3 instances of Bonnie. After June 1st, we will be retiring QDM-based Bonnie entirely. So between now and then, we'll be providing monthly test case transfers from QDM Bonnie to one of the CQL Bonnies. It's also worth noting that QDM Bonnie will be running the same exact accounts, measures, and test cases that are currently on Bonnie prior. And Bonnie prior, after tomorrow, will have the same user accounts, measures, and test cases as Bonnie does today. So we're basically copying what's in the database and moving it one to the right. However, production will still have the same accounts, measures, and test cases as it does today. And so what fully transitioned Bonnie looks like is moving on starting June 1st of next year. Bonnie production will always be running the latest version of Bonnie for this year's annual update standard support. So that means Bonnie 3.0, which is supporting this year's annual update standards, and then the previous year will be on Bonnie prior, so that will be running 2.3. And moving forward, we will continue to follow this pattern. It is also worth noting that starting this afternoon, Bonnie prior will be down for maintenance as we start this transition, and Bonnie production will expect to be down for most of tomorrow. And Wednesday, bonnie.healthit.gov, bonnie-prior.healthit.gov, and bonnie-qdm.healthit.gov will all be up and running. So, some Bonnie resources. The main Bonnie site is listed there. If there are any issues, questions, or concerns, please submit a JIRA ticket using the ONC JIRA. If you want to contact the team directly, there's the email address. And all of our work is online, open source software, so you can view it on the link provided there. All right, back to you.
I would like to thank everyone for attending today's training session. Have a great rest of your day.